Hi everyone, I'm back again, and this time it's with a feature review for the Weldpro ACDCTIG200. I call it a feature review because I'm trying not to make this a product review, basically because, as most of you may know, I am doing this for Weldpro, and what I want to focus on are the features of this machine. I can tell you that I use it on a regular basis and it's worked flawlessly for me, and I'm going to leave it at that and get right to the portion of the machine where we get into the features. It's been a little while coming, and some of that actually has been my fault. They sent me this machine for an initial overview and what I thought of it. I liked the machine a lot, but being old school, there was one thing on the machine that I said, I think you guys can do yourself a great justice by changing it, and that was the foot pedal. The foot pedal was one of those gray toe controlled foot pedals with an amperage control on it, and no matter how much I tried to like it, it was brutal. I mean, I chased this foot pedal all over the floor. Every time I tried to give it a little bit more amperage, it'd try to run away from me. And you know, when you start welding, you get a little bit out of position and you have to change what you're doing. Sometimes you have to kick the pedal around a little bit to get it back into line so you can use it. And I found myself kicking the amperage control by mistake. So what I did is I told them, listen, you really need to have the foot pedal without the amperage control, and you know, a regular rocker style foot pedal without amperage control. So they listened to me. They're great people, I'm going to tell you that. This company is wonderful, and the people to work with them, it's also wonderful. But they listened. And they went back to the drawing board. They came up with a rocker style foot pedal with no amperage control. Everything is taken care of on the console now. And as far as I'm concerned, for the money, this machine is outstanding. So I'm going to move the camera around. I'm going to show you the face of the machine, and I'm going to get into the features of the machine one by one. I'll show you the foot pedal, and I'll show you the TIG torch. But let me turn this around and I'll get right into the features. I'm not going to waste any time. And I'm going to say right now, at the end of this video clip, I'll try to do a few welds. I'll do it maybe with and without pulse so you guys can hear it. I'll do it on AC too. I'll do a little aluminum welding and you guys can see. Don't go by my welds because I can't see anything, but you guys will be able to see what the machine is all about. So hold on one second. I'll be right back. I'm going to turn it toward the machine. Okay guys, here's the front of the machine. I'm going to try to do this initially with the machine off so that the fan doesn't interfere with my trying to explain to you what's going on. Just by the nature of explaining this, I'm going to have to jump around on this screen. But I'm just going to run through this quickly from left to right, top to bottom, and then we'll go back and jump all over the place. This is a toggle. This is my high-class pointer. This is a toggle between TIG and stick welding. This is our one and only necessary digital readout. And I'm going to stop right there and tell you one nice thing that I think this machine has because of this type digital display is no need for all these buttons and knobs on the front of the machine, which are really just places for dust and junk to get in here and get behind the circuit board. So aside from this one knob, everything is closed off and it's kind of sealed from dust and dirt. Okay, so now we're back here. We're at this digital display here. This is the only digital readout that you have to worry about, and it's a multifunction readout, and it will read to you in amps. That's the A, S for seconds, the percentage, and hertz based on where you are along this menu when the lights light up for the different things. And we'll get to all of that stuff. So that's the digital readout: amps, seconds, percentage, and hertz. Next is over temp reading. If it should overheat, this light will go on. That's never happened to me. Next is a setting for remote. That means whether if this light is on, the foot pedal is being used, otherwise your trigger is being used right here on your torch. And this is number 17, by the way, standard TIG torch. All right, so next we go to our main menu control, which is 80% of what you have to concern yourself with. And I know it looks busy, but it's really not that bad. So there's two menu buttons on either side, one here and one there. And if you push this menu button, it advances through all these little lighted sections from left to right. Should you be 3/4 of the way through it and you wanted to go back a step, you don't have to keep menuing. You just press the menu button on this side and it will go backwards to wherever you want to be. So that's what these two menu buttons are. And let's take these things one at a time. The very first button that's going to light up here will be pre-flow. Now, I'm going to say this. Most all the settings that I'm going to talk to you guys about right now are used best when you're using your torch trigger. And they're not so important when you're using your foot pedal, because when you're using the foot pedal, you've got all the controls right at your foot and you can do all these things manually with your foot pedal. But for now, let's just assume initially here we're talking about the trigger on the torch. Oops. Okay, back again. I had a catastrophe. Where was I? Oh yeah. We're over here at pre-flow, and I was explaining that most of what we're going to be going over now is really used mostly when you're using your torch trigger. And that's right here. So, the first light that we're going to encounter is a pre-flow. And what that is a setting that you can set for how long you would like argon to come through the torch before the high frequency initiates your arc. And I believe on the pre-flow it's a 1 second max down to maybe 0.1. And basically what that does is it helps purge your line before you start welding, so that you can be sure that when you start welding you're going to have good argon coverage and you're not going to have a lot of air inside the line. Again, when you're using your foot pedal, you just tap the foot pedal and that'll start the flow. So that's the first one, the pre-flow of argon. Now the second one is a start amps. You can set this from 0, which is what I would set it at if you're using your foot pedal, all the way up to, of course, max amps, which is going to be covered up here, so you don't have to worry about that. But when you're using the torch trigger, there's a little trick that I'm going to show you guys. You may or may not know about it, but it's very useful. So let's just assume that we're going to set our starting amps at, say, 30 amps. And so at that point, the S will light up here for seconds. How many seconds? And we'll put 30 for 30 seconds. And then you push the menu button once again and we'll go over to upslope, and it'll ask you, how many seconds do you want it to take to get from your 30 amps all the way up to your welding amperage? And again, the light will be on seconds, so you can say, for example, let's put 2 seconds. We'll have 2 seconds of delay time from 30 amps until it ramps up to your welding amperage. So we go to the next one, and that'll be the welding amperage. And let's just call that 100 amps. So we're going to weld at 100 amps. And now, the next button that we're going to encounter, if we're welding DC, no pulse, because this little toggle switch here toggles between no pulse and pulse. This toggle switch will toggle between DC current and AC current. So for the time being, we're going to say that we're running with no pulse and on DC. We have our amperage set. When you push your menu button again, it's going to jump all the way over to downslope, because that's the next available setting in the mode that we're in. And it'll say how many seconds downslope do you want before you get to the base amperage. And we'll just say, you know, downslope for 2 seconds to 30 amps. And then we're going to fade off and end. And the next light will be post flow. How much post flow do you want? And that means after the arc ends, how long do you want the argon to continue coming out of the end of the torch? I usually set this between 5 and 6 seconds. That's plenty. And what that does is kind of a twofold thing. It will help cool your tungsten, and at the same time it'll give some shielding to the metal as it's solidifying so it doesn't get all kinds of oxidation. And that's all that really happens when you're running no pulse on DC. Now, if you were to change this setting to pulse, once you are up here in your setting of 100 amps and you hit your menu button, it wouldn't go all the way over to downslope. It would come into the pulse here, and it will ask you, how much pulse time do you want on? And at that point, it will go to a percentage. And you can say, 50% of the time I'll have the pulse on, and 50% of the time I'll have the pulse off. The next button that you'll get to will be pulse frequency. How many times do you want the machine to pulse in 1 second? And I believe this machine is a half a second all the way up to just, you know, a ridiculous amount that I don't think you'd even want to deal with. Maybe all the way to 200. We'll turn the machine on afterwards so that I can't remember every one of the settings, but we'll go through them with the machine on and the fan running. That's the only reason I don't have it on now. So that's how frequently within a second do you want the pulse to be on. And then it'll say, and what do you want your base amps to be? So in other words, the pulse amp is 100 amps, and a base amp is going to be a percentage of your main amperage. So if you want it to go down to 50 amps, again, we'll just go 50%. You can set that at any percentage you want. And then the next thing that we do is go to the downslope and what we talked about, end amps and post flow. Now let's assume that we click this button here and we go to AC. So now we're going to have a few more menu options available to us. The same things are available with the pulse. If you have it on or off, of course, we'll determine whether or not we'll get down into the pulse readings. But let's assume that we are, so it'll go right back down here, ask you for the pulse time on, the pulse frequency, and your base and main amps. But instead of clicking the menu again and going all the way over to downslope, now on AC, you're going to go to AC frequency and AC balance. Now, AC frequency is how many times you're going to change direction from DC plus to DC minus. You know, I really don't want to get in too much to a tutorial on how to TIG weld more than the functions of the machine. But basically, AC alternating current is a combination of DC electrode negative and DC electrode positive. It's pulsing back, it's alternating back and forth. And how many times a second you'd like that to happen is adjustable on this machine via AC frequency. Now, AC balance is asking you, during this frequency of going from electrode negative to electrode positive, what period of time do you want to leave it in electrode negative, and what period of time do you want to leave it in electrode positive? And that has to do with cleaning for aluminum. But there again, there are some really good videos explaining how to rid the aluminum of oxides, and this is not that video. This is just showing all the options that this particular machine offers. So we'll get through all the AC frequency and balance options, and then the next menu button will take you to downslope and end amps, and that'll be everything is controlled from this knob, and based on which of these buttons is lit will determine whether you'll be reading in amperage, seconds, percentage, or hertz. Down here is a 2T and a 4T setting. And 2T and 4T basically refers to, you know, I call it touches. I don't know if there's another term, but every time you move your finger on or off, they consider it a touch. So 2T is the standard way to weld. You push the trigger down and it welds. You release the trigger, that's a second touch, and it stops. Simple as that. 4T gets a little bit more complicated, and you touch it and it begins its up ramp to where you want to weld. You let go and you are at your peak. You weld for as long as you like. You touch your trigger again and it starts to downslope to your end amps. You release it again and it shuts itself off. So that's the difference between 2T and 4T. And there's so many different things that you can do with this welder. It's just honestly going to be a matter of trial and error, but that's half the fun of playing with these new inverters. They have so many more things available to them than the old transformer welders. Now this has, you know, high frequency start, of course, for your weld, but there's really no need for continuous high frequency. When I was welding TIG welding years ago, of course, they had the button for high frequency start, high frequency continuous, and you had to have continuous high frequency when you were AC welding because the transformers couldn't switch back and forth from plus to minus fast enough to keep the arc going, I guess. So they needed continuous high frequency, but not so with these little inverters. Okay, let me turn it on and we'll do it again. Not so much in depth, but fighting the fan. Okay, so first off, we're on Tig mode, and you can see it can toggle to stick and back to Tig. Now, this machine, if you don't change any settings, it will revert back to its default setting of main amperage. What's the main amperage? And you'll see here that it is reading A for amps. This right now is set at 102 amps. Of course, it'll go to 200 amps. But let's just leave it around where we are. It doesn't really matter. Now, let's go to the menu here. And you'll see here pre-flow, and it goes to seconds. How many seconds pre-flow? Next one is start amps, and it's set at 30 start amps. It'll ramp up for 2 seconds to the main amps. And because we are on pulse, the next available setting is going to be pulse time on. And it's all adjustable, but we had it at 50. That's half on, half off. Next is going to be pulse frequency, how many pulses per second. And next is going to be base amps. What do you want the base amps to be? Now this is measured, it's not going to be 66 amps, it's going to be a percentage of the main amps. So you see that's the main amperage, 112. When you set this base amperage, this is a percentage of the main amperage. So I mean, if you set it at 50% of the main amperage, it's going to be half of whatever you've been welding at. Okay, we jump all the way over from here to the downslope because we're on DC. None of this AC stuff matters right now. And we can set our downslope, as we talked about, end amps, and post flow. Now let's give it a quick shot over here to AC. And now I'm going to back up a little bit. No, you know what I'll do? I'll wait for it to go to the main amps. There we go. Okay, now we're on the main amps. Now this time we're on pulse and we're on AC. So as we progress over to the right, we're going to find ourselves with a few extra available options. We still have our pulse, the time on, the pulse frequency, the base amps in percentage, but now, as we go over, we're going to have an option for AC frequency. How many times do you want this to alternate between DC plus and DC minus in a second? And that's measured in hertz. And then, of course, the next one is your balance. Okay, during the period of time that we're changing from DC plus to DC minus, or electrode plus to electrode minus, what percentage of time do you want to leave this on electrode plus. And that's going to be measured in a percentage of time. Okay, and then we just go right back to the settings for, you know, ending the amps. And that's pretty much all there is for the front of the machine for the features. Okay guys, I'm back again. You know, I put the machine on to show you the different lights, but for some reason the fan came through so loud in this recording, and it's really not that loud. I don't know what the heck I'm doing wrong, but I'm certainly not, I'm not going to get any Oscars for videos. But I want to show you, I said I was going to show you a little trick, and I think this is important enough to go over. So here's my torch, and we're talking about 2T and 4T here, but we're going to be in 2T, and we're going to be, let's give it an example that we're inside a car and we're putting a roll cage in the car, and we are so far out of position that either we're going to stick the foot pedal under our arm and squeeze it like an accordion, or we have to come up with another way to do it. And this is so good that you might not want to use a foot pedal at all. So remember, over here we've got our starting amp set at about 30, 2 second up slope to our 100 amp reading, and then we're going to down slope for 2 seconds until we get to our end amps of 30, and then if we release the trigger, we're going to stop welding. But we're not going to release the trigger long enough to stop welding. We're going to get near where we got to weld. If we're standing on our head or whatever we're doing, squeeze the trigger and start out at 30 amps. And we're going to be at 30 amps, coming up to 100, welding, and as you weld, of course, you guys know that the metal begins to get hot. You may not need 100 amps anymore, not that the metal's getting hot. Just let go of the trigger. It starts down sloping for 2 seconds all the way down to 30 amps, but before it shuts off, push the trigger back down again. And it's going to start up sloping from 30 amps back up to your 100 amps. And you can toggle this trigger and the up slope and the down slope. And once you get used to it and how it affects the puddle, boy, you can move right along here, changing the amperage as you go, and never have to concern yourself at all about using the foot pedal. So that's a real good trick, and it's one of those things you're going to have to play with and you're going to have to get used to. But once you do get the knack of it, you're going to say, man, this is a great feature to have. Okay, so that's that. I think I'll throw a few still pictures in here so you can see the foot pedal, and I think that that's going to be just about it, except for the video. I said I'm going to try to shoot a little bit of welding. Hey guys, I'm no video editing expert or presenter here, so I'm doing the best that I can. This is really very simple to understand, and I think the best thing for me to do, maybe I can get a little still picture also of some of the amperage maxes, but this has got such a wide range of adjustment that you're never going to have to worry about anything. Again, it's a feature video showing you what this thing does, but I will tell you it's very nice. So we're going to end it now, and then I'll throw a couple of short clips on there welding. Thanks a lot, guys. Okay folks, I'm going to show you a couple of short still clips. One of close-up of the foot pedal, another one a close-up of the flow meter, and then I'll show you a picture of all the accessories that come in the package with the welder. Now, I know that shortly they're going to be putting up the full manual on weldpro.com website, and you'll be able to go through everything there. All the settings are also listed there. So let's get right to the stills, and then after that I'm going to try to show you a couple of short weld frames videos. Certainly don't go by my welding. I'm really I have cataract surgery coming up in the next couple of weeks. I can't see 2 feet in front of me, and the idea of this whole thing is not for you to critique what I can or cannot do welding, because it's not going to be anything to brag about. But you will be able to hear the machine, you'll be able to see how smoothly it runs, and you'll be able to get at least an idea of how it operates. So here we go with all the stills and then some short videos. Thanks, guys. Let me try one with the pulse.